Everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing another video today. And this is kind of a controversial video, but it's kind of me atoning in a way for some opinions that I used to have, but also realizations and kind of epiphanies that I've had about certain things. And for one, I've talked about this stuff for a long time. I noticed, on my YouTube and so forth. Another thing about this whole thing is that I've had some realizations that over the last 10 years or so, I've really internalized certain things that maybe have been detrimental to my life, my love life, and my social life in general, my success in life. And I'm going to talk about this subject because this is really important to me and really interesting analysis of how I used to think about this stuff, and I'm kind of coming to this sort of like middle ground about this because I've realized that you look at certain things and you're like, people, the media likes to talk about the negative things, right? But you look at things statistically and you're like, well, wait a second. Okay. Well, maybe things aren't as bad as people say in this certain way. Like, I'm going to give away what I'm talking about here. So it's about the Me Too movement, hashtag Me Too, and the accusations that have been made against many men. Some of them probably did go a little too far. They probably did go a little crazy about it in certain ways, over the last 10 years. However, if you look at it really statistically, the amount of movie stars and rock stars, especially, there are, and there have been, I mean, I can count on one hand how many like rock stars or metal musicians or rock musicians have been like accused of stuff, and like it actually like wasn't just some kind of like person trying to make money, or there was some problematic things that they did over time that is a pattern. And this is not to excuse like what happened in the 70s with underage groupies and all that stuff. Like, I'm not saying that was right, like Led Zeppelin, for example, or Kiss, or whoever may have partaken in some of those things. But really, it's an issue of, and I know people don't believe certain people can consent, but let's just go back. Let's just say now, if the women that were in these situations, or women that were any situation, women or girls or whatever, and of any age, were in these situations and they did not feel that they fully consented, a huge percentage, or if not, just a huge plurality of women have come forward with Me Too. And a lot of people dodged those bullets, so to speak, that maybe people feel that they shouldn't have. But to me, this is indicative of the fact that, well, hey, maybe notwithstanding the aspects of the groupies in the 70s, some of which were underage. Notwithstanding that, let's just, that's a whole complicated subject, how that can be handled in this situation, these contexts. And I know there's a lot of controversy with that. I mean, there are some women that have come forward, but it's just not at the level of what you would expect, because they did this stuff so often. So I think if you can argue, as controversial as this sounds, argue of some level or shade of consent that someone could have at a certain time, they had more of that than, say, some of these guys that were Me Too'd for that, or similar things with women of age or whatever. So thinking about that, you can say that it's like you look at the number of people of movie stars, rock stars, everything, that they have an abundance of sex, abundance of women, and really, this is basically my point. And I know the previous statement was controversial. I realize that, but you look at this and you're like, to me, it's like, well, there have been, if you look at the proportion of the population where who these accusations have been at, yeah, it seems like a lot if you see a list like whatever it was at the New York Times or something. This man's been accused of this. It seems like a lot, but if you look at how many famous people there are in general, you know, you could probably number A, B, D, and or A, B, C, and D list: musicians, politicians, actors, producers, writers, whatever. You look at that, you're like, well, it's not even coming close to like, and I'm not going to give a percentage, but like 1% of these people that have been accused of this stuff. And another factor is, if you look at this whole thing as a whole, that's kind of redundant. Whole things as a whole. you you look at these things as a whole. It's really a small number of people, and I'm gonna just say this: like, I don't know what people are doing now in Hollywood, or you know, to some extent, like with the famous musicians. I actually know a few people that are somewhat on the verge of fame. Actually, a few musicians that I'm related to. I don't really talk about this subject with them that way too much, but maybe I should. I do talk about other controversial subjects that we are in agreement on about a lot of stuff on. But I do know in the periphery some famous musicians, somewhat famous musicians. That and I don't think, but this is my point. I don't think people are necessarily having any less sex, or any less like one night stands, or any kind of like, even let's say like somewhat inebriated scenarios that are happening. So for to me, this is kind of the equation that I've made with everything. It's like, for something to really cross into that territory, and this is kind of my reckoning with all this stuff. I'm not saying that there's no false accusations. I'm not saying that, you know, obviously I've been on the side of like, you know, I was on Johnny Depp's side to some extent, you know, and all this stuff. Because to me, that's like going a little too far, the Johnny Depp thing, honestly. And I know people may disagree, that's fine. So, and I've questioned elements of the Marilyn Manson thing, because the Marilyn Manson thing is some of it is based on this whole precept of repressed memories, which harkens back to the days of the Satanic Panic and so forth, and like you know, alien abduction cases and Christian evangelicals like saying there's repressed memories of the satanic cult, you know, all this stuff, McMartin case. So the fact that element's crept in there discredits it to me, even though there might be, you know, anecdotally some repressed memory, you know, there might be. That's a controversial subject, nevertheless. Maybe there's some type of thing, but for them to accuse him of that, you know, like multiple accusers of the repressed memories, that's statistically it doesn't seem right. So I had a little bit of a, you know, questioning of that. So that's why I questioned it mainly. I don't think, I'm not a fan of Marilyn Manson. I thought he was kind of this like, dude, I've heard this before. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be elitist. I'm just like, I've heard Ministry, I've heard Alien Sex Fiend, Thrill Kill Cult, you know, my life with Thrill Kill Cult. I've heard this all before, you know, they have the Manson, Nicholas Schreck kind of stuff, you know, like, oh, you know, it's like this hodgepodge of elements. Going a little side note of that, I just didn't like how it was translated. Like, I would like these elements presented in a certain way. All the elements that Marilyn Manson has, it's like one of those things that looks good on paper, and then you hear it, you're like, yeah. So that's how I thought about it. So anyways, Marilyn Manson. So this is the whole thing about the whole Me Too thing. This is what I'm trying to get to. So for me to personalize this movement as it's an enemy, like, oh my God, they're coming after me. If I go hit on a woman and she's like 25 or 22, I'm so much older, I'm grooming her, you know, or, you know, automatically, even though I live in a 1-bedroom apartment and I drive a Ford Focus. So she might be a PhD student who's going to make more money in 1 year than I've ever made in my life. Who knows? So having these things in my head, you know, because of this stuff has done me real harm. But also I've kind of come around to like, and I'm not saying that I'm like, or just talking to women in general, like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to be Me Too'd at a bar because I'm flirting with a woman, you know, just like these inner things. I think Henry Cavill was scared of Me Too. Does that mean that I have like skeletons in my closet that I'm scared of it? It's like, so you start to think about that too. Like, so like this whole idea that the majority, like there's this huge, it's almost like a conspiracy theory. Like this huge amount of women that just think I'm repulsive. Now, I'm not saying I'm not repulsive, but I'm just saying, that I think there's this huge conglomerate of women that are all into the Me Too liberal women thing that are just like gonna hammer me in the face because they're, I have a 17-year age difference or whatever with them or whatever it is, or I'm just, I'm a stranger and it's weird, or, they think I'm a creep or whatever. I was called creepy before Me Too at a bar, but anyways, it's probably how I presented myself. So thinking that this is going to like cause me harm, like that's automatically almost like a presupposition that I am like a harmful, creepy person in a certain way. But when you look at real life, statistically, people are having sex. I mean, through history without problems for the most part. And I think there are people that do get scared of not coming forward, but like with Me Too, it was such a floodgate that you would expect like the entire music industry, the entire movie industry. I mean, the Diddy's parties notwithstanding, of course, too. Just to go, get like a tsunami of accusations, and you did not have that. You did not. If you look at it, if you really look at it, you don't hear about the band Rat on the Sunset Strip being accused of crazy stuff. You had, some stuff against Axl Rose, but he's, I don't know what to think about that. But there's never been like even I haven't even seen anonymous accusers of like half the hair metal bands or half the bands in the 70s that said it was not consensual. Now, like I said, there's things that we can argue are or aren't consensual with certain scenarios with that. Obviously with drugs and alcohol or age stuff, right? There's a gray area, in my opinion. You can call me problematic for thinking that, but when I'm like, just read about what Lori Maddox thinks about her situation with Jamie Page, which to me seems pretty cut and dry and disgusting, but like, whatever. So I don't know, if you don't feel like, I don't feel like forcing someone to feel like a certain scenario was wrong, even though it definitely is wrong. I mean, it's even beyond like, it's not like she was 16 or 17 even, like, so, I mean, going to these subjects. So I think for me, it was a threat. The Me Too thing was a threat to me because I was like, well, what if I get accused of this older guy, his 30s or whatever at the time. I was like, I'm hitting on a 25-year-old or 21, 22. I can't see. I'll go to a bar and I'm not going to be able to tell if certain women are 21 or 31, or 41 sometimes. I mean, if they look really good, they look really good. But, it's like, what am I going to do? Just like not talk to women or something? Like not flirt, not try to meet new women? So this is kind of this hammer that went against me. Like, and watching a lot of the right-wing media that talked about it too. And I'm not saying like the left-wing media didn't like try to shame men in any way or for wanting to like get better in that area of life, or there's certain stigmas against like you don't meet someone the normal way. Now I'm going to tell you, I mean, then you're not a monster, but a creepy or whatever, or gross or whatever. If you try to meet a woman on the street or God forbid at a bar or something. I mean, not as much as a bar, because I think people go to bars are consenting, like like a lot of them, they're consenting to that style of interaction if they're just like a regular at a bar for the most part. So that's why you don't hear about like what these cases all that much, like about, well, they were both drunk and she accused them. I mean, you do hear about it, but you read more. This is my whole point. You read more about the situation. There are all these details. Like, yeah, that's bad. And if I just read about like the headline, I'm like, oh my God, if you had but one beer, you're gonna be accused of something, or they have one beer, they're gonna accuse you of something. It's like, if you read about the details, if you get really down to the nuances, you realize there are more problematic things about these cases where the cartoon caricature dare I say, right wing straw man argument is like, well, if a girl has one beer, she can accuse you of anything, you know, or something like that. Or if she's, you know, under the age of 30, she'll say that you're grooming her or whatever. I mean, there are those cartoonish kinds of situations. There's some actress that said this older producer was grooming her, but she was 25 or whatever. It's like, you know, but like, come on. And this prefrontal cortex weirdo, terminally online people that accused me of grooming my first girlfriend because I was 24 and she was 19, and I talked about it on this Facebook thread, and they were saying I'm problematic. It's like, shut the hell up. This is like 20 years ago, whatever. So, not the Facebook thing. But anyways, you know, it's like really ridiculous stuff, like, to think about. But like the cartoonish stuff really that's not really how it happens. So I think I was following this like right wing, dare I say, I don't like these wing stuff, I'm just saying, caricature of what they were saying, what these women, a lot of these women are saying, even though there were some women saying these kind of ridiculous things, or some blogger or something saying this. But really, at the end of the day, this is a fact. So people have sex. It's just a natural part of life, okay? Relationships, everything. And there's plenty of people, this is just my opinion, maybe it's like a overly positive thing. Well, you don't know how many people have not, you know, said, maybe, you know, all these statistics and stuff. Well, I'm saying with the Me Too thing, that was like a big open thing that happened with many people, and you didn't have certain people that were known to be like, I mean, when did Lemmy get accused of some crap from some woman? One of the living legends of sex, according to Details magazine, 2004 or whatever. Did he get accused? He had, you know, I mean, he had songs that were really bad. I'm not going to say that it's on Ace of Spades, just to say that. But like, sometimes I find this stuff funny. I'm sorry, I have a weird sense of humor. So the whole thing, like, well, Lemmy wasn't accused of things. Iggy Pop did some really, I mean, if you read Please Kill Me by Legs McNeil and Gillian McCain, you find out like Iggy Pop did some really shady stuff to young girls and stuff back in the day. But why don't they come forward? Why don't they say these things? Why aren't they accusing them of stuff? Well, maybe they looked at it differently now, or looked at it differently then, where it wasn't, I mean, it's pretty problematic the way you read it, but maybe there was more details that we don't know about it, you know, that maybe there was just this bandmate or whoever was talking about this whole thing. It's like, yeah, they did this, but, or maybe they were just used to that. I don't know. Some of it's class too. I think there's class involved in some of this stuff too. Like, girl that's like more low class or whatever won't come forward, but some rich celebrity, you know, white celebrity woman will say some guy did some stuff 50 years ago and, you know, try to get them canceled or whatever. Maybe there's that too. That's an element too. But my whole point is that this whole movement has affected me as my own growth as a person. And I'm repudiating that now and realizing that, well, maybe a lot of those accusations were true and they're fine. It's fine. It doesn't mean that, you know, these like certain people have certain marriages where there's a huge age gap, or, you know, or there's people that flirt with a lot of people, or I'm just saying these different scenarios. Like, there's guys that can, you know, do a lot of weird stuff, but they just go they go near the edge, but don't go over it, you know. It's like, if they were doing something that bad, then they would be, I'm not saying that they wouldn't be accused of anything, because people probably don't accuse certain people because they are afraid. But I think there would be more of a preponderance of this happening if certain fields, like rock and roll, for example, if that was happening that much, other than the Aerosmith thing and some other stuff. I mean, Ted Nugent did some weird stuff too, you know, and it was kind of the cultural moray at the time. I don't think it was popular. I don't think it was like, back then it was like looked up to do that kind of stuff, but it was like more accepted amongst certain crowds. Like the Ted Nugent thing and the Steven Tyler thing, which I won't go into, and I don't condone any of that either. But especially Ted Nugent, because he's kind of a hypocrite about it, stuff like that, like whatever. But he's a great guitar player. I'm not going to deny that. But yeah, it's just like this Me Too thing has made me insecure and made me hesitant to improve part of my life. But if this was real, if my whole point is like, if this Me Too thing was not legitimate and it was just purely a witch hunt, then I would be scared. But the fact of the matter is, people are flirting, people are doing other stuff all over the world all the time. So the fact that people are accused of something and then other men aren't accused that are still doing their thing, even though, means that the people that are accused are probably doing something bad or worse than the other guys that are just doing things in a more ethical, dare I say, way. That's just the way it is. So I was really stupid by this whole notion that this is wrong, like talking to women is wrong now, and it's like they're gonna ban it. Like there was even like these right-wing like outlets saying, like, talking about this French law of harassment or whatever, and I think that probably it might have been overblown, but maybe not. But like, they're gonna ban flirting in the United States in the next 10 years. Like, and I guess some of the woke thing, pushed towards stuff like that, One thing for me is like, I know that like online dating and apps are just terrible nowadays, and that's a fact. And maybe it's a little overblown, maybe they're not all bad, but like, I'd sooner like add a stranger on Facebook, which I did a couple of times more recently, that I found attractive, and started talking to them rather than like using an app, because it's like old school MySpace stuff that I used to do. But yeah, like a lot of us used to do. I think anybody that used MySpace for dating, like even though it wasn't a dating service, I've done it. Like three or four dates from MySpace back in the day. So yeah, this whole thing, I think I overblew the wrong elements of it. It's like, yes, I must not be that terrible. Okay. I've done some things I question in my life, not having to do with like flirting or anything, more things inside a relationship, that I question. But like, as far as like trying to talk to women or trying to date and stuff, if I was that terrible, like, or even if I like start trying to be a little more assertive in that area, like, I don't necessarily think I would be like, drove out of town, or, chased out of town with pitchforks and torches, like, I'm not Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm not Diddy or Bill Cosby. I was just reading about Bill Cosby, and I'm like, I hadn't read about it in years. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of accusations going back a long way, way before Me Too and stuff. So it's like, the evidence is there. People denied he did stuff, but it's like, come on. Especially someone who's like really moralistic. That's the thing. I will not back down from that. I know it's a meme and a trope and like a cliche to think like the most moralistic people, most grandstanding kind of self-righteous people have the most things to hide. I've already said, like, on this channel what I like in my life. Like, I already talk about what I want and what I like all the time. It's like, I already know what I like. It's nothing, and if anybody wants to know, I'll tell them, what I like, what I see happening is, I've always had this trajectory and stuff with all that, but like, I'm not going to let what actually creepy guys, like actually guys that have a record of questionable things that they've done. And I'm not talking about like Billy Joel marrying a 21-year-old at age 60 or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, that's whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm like talking about people that have like a long record of like, oh, well, his ex-wife was 37 or his age or whatever. You just like look at these situations. Like, if you have a record of like, even like, what's his name? What's the actor? Leonardo DiCaprio. If if he was actually like doing these scenarios, and I don't agree with that lifestyle, right? I just gonna say I would never like cut someone off after a certain age or something necessarily. People will misunderstand me. Like people think that I'm like some kind of like, oh, you don't like girls in this old age range. Well, it's not true. You know, it's there's certain things, that aspects that might fit into certain age ranges more than others. So that's why, like, let's say, I want to have children. I'm not going to date a 40, if I date a 45-year-old, it's going to be a lot harder. So dating a 32-year-old, or younger than that, or trying to go after that at least. So people put me in this category. People have put me in this category because I've said some things in the past that were kind of just trying to be like shocking and stuff. That's the thing sometimes. So I'm not going to judge Leonardo DiCaprio on his thing, but if he were like doing something really gross and creepy, like you could say it's creepy, but gross and creepy, like with these women, with these girls, like if he was accused of doing bad things, like in the relationship or when he's doing this stuff, that's when to really watch out, Yeah, you can like look down on his lifestyle. There's plenty probably to look down on it for, but like, and the patterns are, people make fun of it and it's funny, it's ridiculous, like, but like if he were doing something really bad, like Bill Cosby bad, or Roman Polanski bad, or Epstein bad, or whatever, then you can talk about, okay, Leonardo DiCaprio is a creep, he should go to jail. But he's just doing stuff that's a little bit over the line. So that over the line stuff, like, oh my God, what if I did stuff that's like kind of like that? It's so bad, it's terrible. It's like, well, if I ended up dating a 22-year-old, let's say, be like, well, it'd probably be a short-term thing, I mean, I probably wouldn't want to ruin their life by getting married that young, stuff like that. It's like, I'm just saying, like, I don't, that's just the way it goes. And I'd be, it's I don't know, the prefrontal cortex isn't developed enough. Yeah, some terminally online person might think I'm a creep or whatever, but it's not. It's like there's still like a line that's not crossed, with that scenario or situation. And I was just like, for 10 years, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna obsess about this. I'm gonna read about this. Oh my God. So it's just like, I've come to a conclusion that I should not like listen to that voice in my head, that's saying this stuff, and just follow my instincts and follow my thing. And if I do something that's over the line, then I mean, I don't think I would do something over the line, but I'm just saying, like if I get close to that line, I'm gonna cut it off. That's what most people do. I mean, it's a very complicated subject, but like you don't hear about, a lot of rock stars going through this. You don't read about, you read about what they did in the 70s, some weird stuff, but like you don't hear, for the most part, you don't hear about this. And I mean, the Lost Prophets guy, like that's just beyond the pale, or, people like that. But you don't hear about like guys that are like famous and they're probably, I mean, I'm not saying, oh, they're all of a sudden, they're just all celibate now because of Me Too. That's bullshit. That's what I'm saying. Like, nothing has really changed about human sexuality or anatomy that much, I don't think. So that's my whole point. It's like quantifying this by what I interpreted as an affront to my masculinity and sexuality was a grave mistake. And if I did do something, I did beyond the pale or whatever, I mean, I don't know what I would do, because I'm actually pretty boring, for the most part. But I'm just saying, like, someone questioned me about, I was 42 and I dated a 26-year-old. It's like, well, what are you going to do? It's like, I can't really do much about that. The irony is, so I actually was dating someone when I was 42 and she was, or 41, and she was 26, and her mother was a little mad about it. And it's kind of funny because she told me that her mother was mad about it, but it's like, oh well, then this girl told me that her mother was dating like someone that was, and I'm not saying that this has anything to do with it, but some like trans woman that was younger than her daughter for a while. And I'm like, okay, so you're criticizing your daughter for dating someone my age, but then you're dating someone with an even bigger age gap than me and her. There's something not right about that. And you know, that's the whole thing. Like when these people that are more busybodies about things, they do have skeletons in their closet, or they do have some kind of contradictory thing that they accept. And that's why I like to be like a non-hypocrite. I'll just say like, yeah, if I'm at a bar or they're backstage 21, you know, yeah, I'm not going to apologize for that. But I'm just saying, like, backstage, you know, not the Belle Biv DeVoe rhyme, by the way. No, none of that. If you look that up, anyways. But yeah, I would partake in groupie culture, but I would be very careful about it and be very discreet about it and very intelligent about it, you know. So I mean, that's probably what a lot of the guys did, you know, at least do now. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, there's some weird stuff that have happened. If the woman isn't regretting it now, then if they truly aren't, then I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say it's not wrong, but it's like, you know, people have their times that they do weird things in their life, you know, whatever. But, you know, I'm just blathering now, but yeah, that's just my whole thing. Is I've come to this conclusion that where there was smoke, there was fire, and then I ignored a lot of buildings where there was no fire. You know, I just looked at this thing like so black and white and so like in this weird, unnuanced way that I thought it was a threat to my manhood. It's like, why? You know, most people aren't. I mean, it's not that most people aren't like reading these feminist blogs or something. It's not even a matter of that. It's like most people just live their lives, and a lot of them might actually agree with a lot of this stuff. Like, oh my God, you know, I would never have a one night stand from a bar, or I would never date a 47-year-old man, or whatever. It's like, well, yeah. Then Sean Connery, like rest in peace, Sean Connery. Guy like Sean, you know, let's say they like some older guy. Let's say they liked Harrison Ford. I actually knew this girl. Speaking of that, I knew this girl that loved Bill Murray, and I was dating this girl for a little bit. And she's like, yeah, I would do Bill Murray. It was a weird. She was like a Wes Anderson, millennial Wes Anderson fan. She's like, yeah, I love Bill Murray. I would do him, even though he's like 30 or 40 years older than her or whatever. But so like they might say situationally, they might say these things about these blogs or these like, you know, writers or, you know, like, or whatever, gender things. But you look at people's actions, and I'm not talking about just women. This like pickup artists say like, don't look at a woman's words, look at her actions. Like, yeah, well, that applies to both genders, you know. So that's my whole point. Me Too did ruin a lot of my life, along with other things I won't go into this video about, but like, for me to personalize it and take it so, my God, it's punching me in the face, oh my God. It was a severe mistake of my life, I'll just say that. And I'm learning that that's not going to be the way forward for me, because I'm like, okay, well, I don't know where I'm going with this subject at this point in time. I'm really trying to get myself in shape better, which unfortunately I had a little bit of a setback when I went on the scale today, or was it yesterday? And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. And I'm just like, you know, there's a lot of things I'm trying to improve. I'm in a self-improvement phase, nevertheless. Like, I haven't been probably since like 2010, 2011. So like, well, pretty much 2009 through 2011, but like, I really had a lot of setbacks, and I did not do it consistently, even back then, but I want to do it now. But I'm not going to let this kind of stuff affect me. I'm not going to let these types of ideas affect me. You know, I have mixed feelings about Me Too even now. I'm not saying that I don't harbor some resentment towards parts of it, But I think like overall, the overarching meaning of it is it was lost on me because I was so fixated on how it's like they're just going after men that flirt with women. They're, you know, anywhere that they're not related, you know, not don't have a job with, or you're just supposed to like give a note to the girl, so some girl you work with, and say, "Want to go on a date? I can. Do you consent to this?" Oh, you know. I mean, the real world doesn't work like that, and not people are not going in saying that that's like. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think a guy that did that would probably be creepier than a guy that just like flirted with a girl. You know, just like normal. That's probably the guy that would be the creepy Me Too guy actually. So sort of, yeah. This whole thing is just so stupid. Like just this whole notion that's like this affront to my existence, and when maybe some of it was legitimate. You know, I'm not trying to be like one of those like male feminists like has skeletons in their closet. I have skeletons in my closet too. You know, I've done some weird things in relationships and written some questionable songs at times. There were jokes, but you know, nevertheless. But anyways, that's about all.